this meeting to order. Roll call. Present. Here.
Present.
Here.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. If you'd all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Chaplain Garcia is going to lead us in the invocation tonight.
Commissioners, staff, in behalf of the Liberal Ministerial Alliance, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and to pray with you tonight. At this time, I could ask each of us to let us bow our head in reverence to the Lord and let us pray together. Father God, we have so many things to be thankful for. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity this day to come and to pray for our mayor, for our city manager, for the commissioners, and least, Lord, we think of the staff. I think of the employees, especially our law enforcement, our police department, our first responders, and our fire department. Father God, tonight I pray for each commissioner, for community support. I ask them to seek your wisdom, and I ask for the reassurance from all of us, and I pray for safety as they all work to accomplish their duties in serving not just my home, but our community and our city, in which they make our home, my home, our homes, a safe and a better place in which to live. I pray for each one of you tonight, commissioners, with thankfulness in my heart for answering God's call to duty and serviture. So tonight, once again, I ask for wisdom, and I thank you for your heart of service. Our community, our city, and once again, I ask for community the very best of your ability. I would ask a blessing upon each one of you and a blessing upon your family. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, item number 1 is awards, proclamations, and presentations. Do we? None of those. Okay, all right, thank you. Item number 2 is approval of the agenda.
I'll make the motion that we approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 3, minutes from the October 11th, 2022 regular meeting.
I'll make a motion, we approve the October 11, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. Item number 4 is items from citizens. Do we have any citizens who'd like to address the commission? I know we have some citizens who want to address the commission, but we'll wait for that item in the agenda. No? All right. Item number 5, items from groups. Do we have any groups that would like to address the commission? Okay. Item number 6, consent agenda. We have 3 items, 2 leases, and minutes from 2 meetings of the Liberal Housing Authority.
Make a motion to approve the agenda or consent agenda as printed.
Okay.
I'll
Second.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All right, thank you. Okay, if we just get through the next 6 or 7 as fast, it'd be great. Okay, item number 7, ordinance number 4585, special use for 333 West 18th Street, AT&T Tower on the Liberal Country Club.
Do you want to cover the 3 options?
Sure, I can. Just so everybody in the public is aware, as well as the commission, Regarding this issue, all of you have three different options that are in front of you tonight. One is that you can adopt the recommendation by ordinance of the Planning and Zoning Committee, which would be by just a majority vote. Another option is you could override the Planning Commission's recommendation by a 2/3 vote, obviously, because there's 5 of you voting, that would take 4 people in order to override that. And if you were to do that, federal law would also require a finding be made as far as the basis for the denial of the placement of that tower. So that'd need to be something that would be established by those individuals voting against it. And if you don't have enough votes to do either one, then the last option is you can return to the Planning and Zoning Commission with directions to specify the basis of why you guys failed to approve or deny the actual, the request. And you would send it back. They would then go through the process again. Then it comes back to all of you again. Regardless if they recommend approving or denying it, then it would be a majority vote on the commission to make a determination if it should be approved or be denied.
So how do you want to handle this? You want to hold discussion till after we hear comment? Or would you rather comment first, then have discussion? Or have comments from the citizens?
Let's have
I
comments
was
from the
here
citizens.
from
That's kind of what I think too.
citizens.
So, all right, if you would, come to the podium, if you state your name and address for the record. And we have a lot of people here that I think are going to comment, so if you would please keep your comments as brief as you can. We want everybody to have a chance to speak, but try and keep it brief, so.
My name is Lane Freimeyer, 851 North Holly Drive here in Liberal. Thank you for allotting us some time to speak here in regard to this matter. I'm not from Liberal, Kansas. I was born in West Texas. I went to law school. I'm a lawyer in town. I'm a lawyer with the law firm of Yoxel, Antrim, and Freimeyer. I came out here in 2010. I met a local girl. We have a kid here. She goes to USD 480. I'll probably be here for the rest of my career, and I'll probably die in this town. In all candidness, I'm also an avid golfer. I'm the vice president of the Liberal Country Club, and I'm here to speak in favor of this cell phone tower. What I've provided for each of you are pictures of various towers that are around town. Admittedly, there may be a few on the south side of town that may not technically be in city limits, because quite frankly, I'm not sure where those lines lie exactly, but there's approximately 15 towers here in this town. Towers aren't unusual for this town. There's been concerns raised about the proximity of these towers to houses, things about towers falling down on houses, things about icicles falling off and possibly endangering people. And what I'd like to point out is picture number 1 is a tower, I don't know how many foot, I don't think it's 150 foot, tower right behind the Seward County Health Department. And you can see it's right next to housing. I'm sure you all know where this is. Picture 2 is the tower behind KSCB. And you can see just to the left of that, that's a residential street. That tower's approximately within the fall zone of those houses. Also, there's a tower, picture number 4, there's a tower that's identical to the tower that would be going into the Liberal Country Club behind Southgate Mall. There's an apartment complex right there, and there's houses. I drove by there today. It is well within the fall zone. So if these are legitimate concerns about safety issues such as where a tower is going to fall, who could be impacted, why are these other towers previously approved by this governing body? By this governing body, I mean the council as a whole. I'm not speaking to you individually because I know you've had various terms and not all of you have participated in these decisions. But the simple fact of the matter is if you start picking and choosing and saying, okay, well, we don't have these concerns for these other 3 towers, but we have it for this one tower. When the whole kind of underlying notion here is people don't want it because they don't want to look at it. And they want to tell AT&T where to put this tower, which the law plainly states you cannot do. What I would submit to you is, and you have your own counsel, you have competent counsel, but Lynn, I would suspect you'd say the same thing. A court's going to view that as that's an arbitrary and capricious decision. You don't get to hold the same towers to 2 different standards, and make judgment calls over the same identical things that conflict. I think any court in this country would find that as well. There's been concerns raised about property values, okay? I don't think that those concerns, people I think are misguided on how property values work. First of all, if this tower goes up, the only evidence you have before you that's any competent evidence is a site survey by AT&T. You've got 2 letters from local real estate agents opining as to a decrease in property values. Well, one, and I realize this isn't a court of law, but if it were, Don Witzke and Tanya Colvin line upon those issues because they're not competent to do so. They're simply not experts in those things. However, licensed certified Kansas appraiser, okay, that was a comparable study that was done out here to basically rebut these types of things. Further, Angela Eichmann and the Seward County, they go around and assess these properties. I promise you, there's a tower over there. She's not gonna come in here and say, well, money. It's $20,000, $30,000 less, so we're gonna tax you less, and then, you know, the county, the city, USD 480 are gonna see less tax revenue. That's not upon someone selling their house, which at best is speculative, and there's really no competent evidence to support that. Where this property, this tower is gonna go, this is a very simple, I mean, I just really don't see any reason for this commission to deny. Simple, okay? If you look at that map, and I've looked at that aerial map there, I've marked where all those towers are. I went around and did commission. Folks, if you want to have cell phone coverage in a residential area, it's very simple. You got to have a tower in the residential area. There's just no 2 ways about it. I understand that people don't want to look at it, but that's just the cost of progress, okay? You got all kinds of things out here. You got ethanol plants. You got national beef plants that stink. You have nuclear power places. You have all these things that impact people, and they go on because that's what you have to have for progress. Where this area is in the club, it's my understanding that's the only area in the club that's gonna work. It's the only area that we have space for in the club, aside from next to the water tower. The reason it cannot go next to the water tower is because the engineers at AT&T have determined that there's too much interference from the height of that water tower, and it simply does not work. I'm sure Greg will speak to, or Glenn will speak to this further, but from what I've been told, this is a decision that if this tower goes up, it is gonna take the capacity load off the entire city of Liberal. It's not just gonna benefit people in the northwest corner of town, it's gonna take the load off the entire city. So really, in my view, you have a simple thing here is we're looking at a benefit of infrastructure and progress, critical infrastructure that's been deemed by the Kansas State Legislature, in fact, that's gonna benefit this entire city. And I would hesitate to think that a commission would not approve a benefit of that magnitude to an entire, we're talking tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands through the course of years, you know, to the dismay of a number of people. I realize some people don't like it, but that's a cost of doing business. That's a cost of progress. Aside from that, then I'll recede from the podium here, but this is critical. Guys, you approved a housing addition for Marvin Chance up there, which is great. We need more houses. Awesome. Good job on that. These people aren't gonna have cell phone coverage. From a personal standpoint, my wife has an AT&T cell phone. She has to go to the west bedroom of our house to make a phone call. What if you have someone slip and fall, we gotta call 911, but we can't make that call because we don't have any cell phone coverage? That's a big issue in my mind. That's a huge issue. And that's something where the commission needs to look out for the citizens and provide them with the critical infrastructure that they need to have safe and productive lives. No one has a home phone anymore. I don't know personally know anyone. The only landline I'm aware of is in my office. I've surveyed a number of people. I don't know anyone that has a landline. Everyone has a cell phone. AT&T is a major carrier amongst others. For all those reasons, I just ask you to take a really objective look at things here and not get swayed by people who show up here and they're upset. This is no doubt a difficult decision. That's what you were elected to do, is make difficult decisions. And undoubtedly, Some of your decisions are going to upset certain people, but you need to think about the community as a whole. And I would submit to you that this is something that the community as a whole needs. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved it unanimously. Mr. Bridenstine, I believe is his name, they gave their recommendation. I saw the letter in the agenda packet today. They believe that it should be approved, and I ask you to do the same. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you again for your time hearing this, this application for this building, for this tower. My name is Glenn Clockey. I am with a company called Network Real Estate out of St. Charles, Missouri. We represent AT&T in this matter. So I just want to go over a brief history of the location, how we got here. As you all know, we had a prior application at a different location in town for a tower that was denied. We worked on that for quite a while. We have been working on this particular location for 4+ years now. AT&T needs this tower. AT&T is trying to provide critical coverage for the city of Liberal. After the meeting, after the last tower was denied, I was contacted by a city official to look at a location, which was the golf course, and was told that if we were to make a deal with the golf course, the city would support it. We went on going back and forth. I visited with the golf course, was able to make a deal. During that time, COVID hit. Things stopped for a year plus. I couldn't travel, but we kept working on this location, and was in contact with the vice mayor at the time. For some reason or another, he stopped talking to us, and there was a lot of turnover in the city staff. You had a city planning zoning manager he was no longer there. I met with the interim city planning zoning manager about this location, trying to get somebody to say, look at this, I need somebody to look at this and give me your recommendation of which direction we need to go with this. He looked at it, said he'd get back with me. He never got back with me, and I guess he went on to a different position with the city. So long story short, I have worked to try to get the city's involvement on this location. Because again, AT&T needs this location. We were able to do a deal with the golf course, so we moved forward with our application. So as far as the coverage objective that this tower is going to cover, when you look at AT&T's coverage right now for the city of Liberal, we have 5 towers that are all in the outskirts of this city. Years ago, that was enough. And the reason they're out there is because they're in commercial areas, and they just shot in from those areas into the inner part of the city, because that was where we could put towers. We've reached a point in our coverage, and you've reached a point with the city of growth, where we can't cover what we're trying to cover now with this tower, just shooting in with our towers anymore. We have to be in an area. If we want to cover residential areas, we have to be in residential areas. COVID proved that. In the last 3 years, I have done 50+ new towers for AT&T in Kansas, the state of Kansas, just for that reason, to cover residential areas, because people were working from homes, they couldn't use the internet, they couldn't use their phones, they couldn't dial 911. This particular tower is to cover a critical area that does not have coverage. It has questionable coverage right now, and this will fill that hole. So, this is a critical site for AT&T. They need this site. We wouldn't continue working on it for 4 years if they didn't. And this location was picked so that it will talk to the other 5 towers. It will alleviate what's happening right now with the other 5 towers because of the growth in the city, is that we're getting dropped calls, people can't use their data, people can't call out, let's say, again, if somebody needs to dial out 911 and you can't dial out, it's critical that they need to be able to dial 911. So what this tower will do will alleviate capacity off all 5 of those towers and take on thousands and thousands and thousands of calls over years, thousands and thousands of data that it will carry once it's up. So, we really have tried to be a good partner with the city. We try to work with the city 100%. We're asking for approval for this tonight. AT&T wants to be a good partner. They're trying to provide a service to the city. They're not, we didn't come here to make enemies. They want to provide service for their customers now and the customers in the future. So if you have any questions, I'm available for any questions that you have.
Quickly, I'd like to know, what would it cost to engineer another site nearby? Because at the end of the day, I think the location, as long as you're close to that location, you'll be fine. So you're mainly discussing engineering the cost of another site.
We
Is
are,
what it
we
would
are,
cost.
I mean, to move it again would be, we've looked into it, they want this site. We're here to talk about this site. This is the site that AT&T wants. To go into the whole, what will it cost AT&T to re-engineer another site it's just something that we're here, we want this site to be approved. We want to, we're here, we've worked on the site, this site, particular site for almost 2 years. So to get into that is just, I couldn't even give you a number because I'd have to sit down and say, okay, we need to start over again. It's a lot of money. It's a ton of money. So at this point, for what AT&T has spent to get this site going from the first site to this location, they've spent considerable amount of money.
The question I have, at some point in time, there's no need for that tower if we go to a different sort of technology. What are provisions are there for decommissioning the tower?
In the lease that we have signed with the country club, if the tower is abandoned, after 120 days, AT&T is responsible for taking the tower down and all concrete a foot below grade. So it's gone.
Okay.
Everything's gone.
Mr. Mayor, if I just would add to that, I mean, we were conscientious of that, and I will tell you that if that tower were to be decommissioned, rest assured, we don't want it on our golf
Well, I
course. We
get
would
that,
make sure
yeah.
it was taken down promptly.
When you use the term "this site," are you saying the exact measurements of the location, or are you saying the site is the country club property as a whole?
The tower locations. When I reference a site, I'm talking about what the location that this tower is, because they run propagation maps to how this thing is gonna cover a particular area, and how it also relates to the surrounding towers. So that's what I'm referring to.
So 2 weeks ago, did I misunderstand when you said you were working on this site for 2 years? Did I misunderstand when you said that there were 3 locations on the country club that would work?
No. This is the only, this is the location. So when we originally met with the country club, when we go to a property owner, okay, so the first thing I would say to a property owner is, look, I want to put a tower in this location, or on your property. I, at that point, had pretty much narrowed down, and this was narrowed down for us by the cities, telling us, okay, we would really like you to go to the country club, we'll support it.
Let me
So
correct you there, that wouldn't be the city, that would be a representative.
he was a representative of the city.
That doesn't
I
necessarily
understand that.
represent the city, it's, yeah.
We thought we were working with the city at that time. This was
I mean, it
2.5
just
years
feels like
ago.
talking to me outside, and I don't represent
I
the city.
get that, I get that, but if you came to me and said, hey, after a meeting, the city would like for you to go look at this, I, as a representative for AT&T, I'm gonna say, look, here's what we're dealing with. We don't wanna, what we thought we were eliminating was like, we wanted to work with the city. We wanted to work with a representative of the city at the time. I realize he's not here. I realize that nobody here is, the whole commission's different. So we didn't know that was gonna change. So let me get back to your question as far as the location. Meeting with the country club, Rod and I looked around at different locations on the golf course itself. There were 2 that would work for him. One was by the water tower, which we tried to make that work, and it was the other one was where we are now. I took the one back to AT&T's engineers and said, run this one because this is furthest away from the homes. It was too close to the water tower. We get what's called, it has coverage blockage, but basically what it does is the RF bounces off the tank is metal, it blocks the coverage. So we were losing a third of our coverage in that sector, so they couldn't use it. We had to move it away. But we're still in compliance with the city setback. We're 188 feet from the nearest residential.
And you're saying residential property line or residential structure?
Your ordinance says residential structure,
I
not
think
property
it-
line.
I think it says district. Would that be a property line? But anyway, not that
Right.
right now, but, so my question is, so then when you say site, then you're saying the two sites that, you're not saying that you guys looked at any other sites on the country club, just the two that the country club wanted you to look at?
Correct.
In those considerations, did they take into consideration that the previous commission denied a tower because of the community's outreach for being too close to their neighborhood? And then the site that ends up being chosen is once again next to neighborhoods on a 63-acre lot.
We always take that into consideration. We always do. I never go into a site, there's not a site, you can stick a pin in the ground anywhere that I do a tower, and somebody's gonna come in and complain about it. I mean, that's just the truth. No matter where we go, we're gonna run into that. Because years ago, when all these networks were being developed, and there was no coverage, you could stick a site out in the middle of a cornfield and it worked, because they were huge towers, they were 350-foot towers, so they shot that coverage a long way. You know, these networks they've been being built for the last 30 years. We're down to a point where they're very, very specific. I mean, there are towers that are going up in very, very urban areas that are designed to cover an intersection. That's all they're designed to cover because that's what they need. So the towers are getting shorter, and the coverage that they're trying to cover, the models are getting smaller. Like this tower will cover probably about a 4-mile radius, circular radius. So that's, you know, and I understand what you're saying, is that when we go look at something, we look around and go, okay, there's houses here. We're trying to cover houses. We can't go 1.5 miles away to a commercial piece of property because there's already a tower that the AT&T is on. We can't just keep shooting in. There comes a time, and that's where we are right now. It's not just AT&T. Verizon's doing it. T-Mobile's are doing it. They have to be near the residential areas to cover the residents, to get coverage in their houses. Because people want coverage in their basements. They want coverage. They want to be able to use their internet while they're sitting in their office downstairs. It just, you know, that's what they want.
Yes, so my other only question related to that then is, so it's not a exact, there's only like this point, this point, this point in town that'll work, but there's points that won't work, and the second point didn't work because of the water tower, but if you would have moved 200 yards to the east, it's possible it further away from the water tower than the site you chose, and it probably would have worked.
We didn't look at it. It was up to the
Well, that's what I
property.
mean, you
Yeah,
didn't
no,
look at
we
it 'cause
didn't
the
look at
property-
it.
that's what
Yeah,
I was asking.
the water tower,
You only looked at the two spots.
the water tower created
Yeah.
an obstruction, which
Yeah.
we know that was gonna, yeah, I thought maybe we could shoot over it, but we couldn't.
How many feet is the tower gonna be from the property line of the country club?
From the property line?
Yeah.
I'd have to
You're
look at the
getting
property.
a-
I
you're
know
getting
it's,
a-
I know
you're
it's
getting a 70 by
180
70.
feet from the resident. I think from the property line, I don't know where his line is. I'm gonna say it's probably, I don't even wanna guess. I'd have to look.
Okay.
I would have to look.
'Cause I know-
I think it shows from the residents, but let me look real quick.
'cause the 70 by 70 foot's right in the right corner, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm thinking, but, you know, we also provided a structural letter that explains that if the monopole is designed different than most other towers, that if it does go down, it's, you know, it's a very rare thing, it collapses in on itself, so it doesn't fall like a tree, so it doesn't, you know, it will collapse in on itself. I'm looking, I know we showed the,
That was another question, then, since you brought that up right then, I'm gonna.
Go ahead.
It says on the information that you gave us, 115 mile an hour, or 40 mile an hour with 3/4 of an inch of ice on it could make it fall. And if I remember right, the information said should collapse, right? Didn't say absolutely will, 100%.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it on here, and I apologize, but we just went from, what we're showing is 108 feet from the nearest residence. Seeing the property line. I'm gonna guess that it's probably, the tower itself is probably about 100 feet from the property line. And don't hold me to that, I can find out for you, but I can measure that for you.
Commissioners, the edge of the lease area is 20 feet away from the edge of the country club property.
Is there a 20-foot alley in that, or an easement? Is it an alley or
That
easement?
doesn't include the alley.
Well, that's, I mean, there's an alley platted there, and there's, so you're 40 foot from his property line to the 70-foot fence, not the tower.
So then the tower's
centered
another.
35 feet?
Another 35 feet. away.
75 foot from the
Right.
property line?
Over 75 feet.
Yeah. There's maybe a strange question. How far is the 70 foot from the fairway? Do you know that?
I have no idea.
Do you know, Ron?
Ron, do you know?
It's approximately, I'd say 70 foot from the green. I mean, where that tower's gonna go, it's approximately gonna be kind of right in between our playing area where the cart path is, and the boundary. Because, yeah, it's approximately 70, 80 foot, something like that.
You're talking about fairway, not green.
Well, where, in the northwest corner, in that map, the aerial map will show you, but in that northwest corner is where, number 5 green is. So there's not a fairway really around there, it sits next to a green on a fairway. And a tee box on 6 tee box, and there's a cart path.
5 was a dog leg, right?
So Warren, you'll have to take a look at the map. If you look at that map, I think it'll make perfect sense. I apologize for the confusion and how I'm trying to explain it.
Tower is straight west of the green.
Yes.
West of the green, but quite a ways west of the green. It's closer to the dog leg fairway then, right? That rough area that's out. I haven't played it for a while, but you got kind of a, if you drive left of the fairway, there was a weed path, or, a rough out there. And it's gonna be in that rough area, yeah.
Ronnie, Google Maps, if you pull it up where it's at, where it's proposed, 183 feet to the center of the green.
So it is out in the middle of that rough area then.
It's in the far corner of it, to the northwest. So your structural letter for the monopoles, and looking at, just a quick Google search on how those towers fall, it seems like the majority of them who do fall, and of course, it's in major storms.
Correct.
So I don't blame them for doing that, but it seems like the majority of them are falling at, their break point is at the base. That's where their fail is. Even though they are designed to fail within themselves,
Right.
their major fail point is always at the base from the ones who have fallen because of major storms.
When a storm, like if a storm were to push it over, yeah, that's, the ones that I have had seen pictures of, there is a, they have cracked at a weak point further up. I don't know, I'm sure if you put a tower that's going through a hurricane or a tower that's going through a tornado, it's gonna react differently depending on the winds and what direction it's being hit from. So, I mean, I've seen, and I've told you before that there's a tower in St. Louis, and I live in St. Louis, that went through a major tornado that it was in the path of this tornado. And when I went out and looked at it, the path that it cleared, it actually hit our airport. The tower wasn't phased. It didn't do anything to it, which was amazing to me because it was a big tornado. Took down a billboard right next to it, took all the buildings out in its path. But the only thing that happened to the tower was it tweaked a couple antennas at the top. So they're built to withstand a lot. I mean, they really are. Because when a hurricane hits or a tornado goes through an area, what's left and what what people are using for communication is wireless, always wireless, because you know, I used to work for Sprint, I managed 7 states. When we had a catastrophe like that, one of my jobs was to get the towers up and running, because the power was out in all these areas. We would roll out generators, you know, that was how people were communicating. Because, you know, landline were knocked out, the power was knocked out, so, you know, we would get the sites up on the air as fast as possible. Within 48 hours, they'd be back up, so people could be using them. The towers themselves have a backup battery built in them, like if your power goes out, they have enough backup battery inside to keep them on air for 2 days. So it gave us time to get our stuff out there.
Any other questions, Glenn?
Anything to move on?
I was gonna ask Keith, how far that was from the north? Is it the same, that's an easement on the north side, not an alley there, right?
Yeah, that's.
Is it 20 foot from the easement?
Yeah, I believe it is right at the south edge of the easement itself.
Okay, yeah,
Fence on it.
right, the fence, the 70-foot fence, so it'd be, yeah. And do we know how tall the water tower is? Is it pretty close to 150?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked Jose and he said it was around 120. But I'm not guaranteeing anything on that, you know.
I thought it was a good top edge, and it was 140, 42, and when I hit it, and then you got the crown on top of that. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
your
much.
time.
Appreciate it.
I'm Brad Carr. I live at 1841 North Calhoun. My house, my family's house is right there where the tower's going to be. I, as well as a couple of other residents there, will be the closest to it. So obviously, I'm a NIMBY, not in my backyard. Mentioned last meeting the safety and the property value concerns. Not going to rehash that tonight. Tonight, I'd like to discuss how we got here and express my concerns of how we got here. So back at Planning and Zoning meeting on June 10th, 2021, the residents close to New Beginning site had some of the same concerns our neighborhood have. You got safety, the views, property values. Surprisingly, all Planning and Zoning members at that meeting agreed and felt a better location was possible. Tracy Gutierrez can see why homeowners wouldn't want it, believes better location is possible. Mona maybe was thinking location isn't what I was thinking. This is coming from the minutes. Nick Schwint heard from Glenn and homeowners and enough to make decision. Think there's enough info for another location. Mr. Mers, Steve Mers, lots of negatives. Denied 5-0. So after the 5-0 denied vote, like Mr. Glenn's talked about, Taylor Hardin reaches out. He's the then vice mayor of the city of Liberal. He calls Glenn with the country club spot. Glenn mentioned turnover within the city, difficulties during COVID and moving forward with it. At this point, Taylor quit answering his phone call. So AT&T and Glenn moved forward with a new app with the hope, and this is from the last meeting here at the City Commission, the hope that the city would be on board. This was at the 10/1/22 Commission meeting. I'm a loan officer here in town. If I have an applicant of a $2 million app, I'm not gonna hope when he quits answering my phone calls that he's gonna show up to the closing table and come sign my loan docs. So a little miscommunication there, with the hope that we would proceed with the app. Question I have is, how does one commission member decide a location, and where is all the correspondence that Glenn has with the city of Liberal working on this new site? From all the conversations I've had with prior commissioners, Taylor was not speaking for the city of Liberal, but was researching on his own. Wasn't city of Liberal working with AT&T and Glenn. So fast forward to our September planning and zoning meeting. This is where I've got a few issues that kind of get me riled up. Now all of a sudden, we got Nick, Mona, and Steve to okay it, with Hall wanting a commission approval, as well as Hyro. It was his first meeting. Young man was also willing to see what the city approval would be. The city planning and zoning secretary called the following day after that 5-0 vote to approve it to verify who or if anybody was a member of the LCC, the Liberal Country Club. Come to find out, Mona, who made the motion, and Nick Schwint, who seconded the motion, begrudgingly, I would say, took 20 to 25 seconds for a second. These two happen to make it. The motion and the second, that is, let you guys decide. Number 4, this is where I get to my little map here that I've given to you, color-coded the best I could. And these are items Glenn mentioned in our October 11th meeting. He said this is a capacity site and is to help cover a large number of residential areas. So I've gone to Google Maps, and we were also provided the second and third page was our current state of coverage, and page 2 is with the tower. So I took that and I went to Google Maps and plotted it out here. The orange spot I marked, these are areas where the current tower comes in. These areas are spots that are left unchanged or very little improvement to their coverage. Mr. Frymire says this is covering the whole city. If you look at the map, it doesn't even get downtown. We're just talking a little square here. It is not reaching the whole city. Out of this orange, we've got the mobile home park up there at the corner of Western and Tucker. This has approximately 90 homes. Take it off the map, count them, approximation. We have approximately 48 homes from Rockridge Street south to 15th. We've got Brookdale Assisted Living, Express Wellness Office, the Southwest Medical Center office, and the Southwest Guidance Center. And then you go to the northeast, you've got approximately 70 residences, 4 to 5 large apartment complexes, Good Sam, all in that northeast corner. I say this as we put this tower up, we're not affecting any 4 of those quadrants with this tower. If we're here to help cover more residential areas, I would think you'd want to try and hit these 4 spots. So then I go down the little yellow line, yellow highlighter. This is the improvement in the RSRP, your reference signal receive power. If you look, the little yellow spot I highlighted, look what we cover here. We cover 63 acres of a golf course. We got the clubhouse and 9 homes. where I think if we better place this tower, we could cover this northeast corner, northwest corner, and get more residential coverage instead of a golf course and 9 homes. Then I've mapped out the blue. Again, it's on that second page of the map that AT&T's provided us. It's Marvin's development, and it'll go as far as east as the lake, over to Western, and then south to the New Beginnings Church. This is the dead spot, and we're worried about covering down here in the southeast corner. I don't get it. I don't see where the benefit of covering, we're gathering more residential spots covered in this. And in the green, these are spots I've reached out to. We've talked about this in the past. People that are willing to put it in. Again, one of them, it's just 2 blocks north of where they originally wanted to go. It's zone commercial. It's there for it. Could have been up 4 years ago. Also, doing some of this research, they got the 150-foot, 200, 300-foot towers. They've also got smaller towers, and we've got one down at the south part of town. It's your next picture. My youngest daughter and I went on a field trip, went and looked at towers. It's back behind the mall. It's it's a small cell tower that if you implement these, you can go and send your signal out further off of your main big tower. So there's that option. Then come back to the safety. Glenn mentioned the pegs would be removed for when the guys come in to work on them. I took my measurement, took the pole down at the Southgate Mall. Took my iPhone and measured, it's 12 foot up. The pegs are still in it. The pegs are bolted. Doesn't look like they remove them or easily removable. They're still in that tower. This tower is an exact tower that they're proposing to put behind my house. Like I said, it's very attractive to go climb it, and the pegs are still in it. They are not 50 foot up. They're 12 foot, very accessible. Then I'd like to discuss the impact study that AT&T purchased and provided for you guys. Number one, use Kansas City listings and properties. And then I provided local realtors as their opinion. Apparently they're not qualified enough. They don't know their market. I beg to differ. And mentioned the decrease in marketability of my house. If you were to take that tower and put it in my yard, if you picked up my house and moved it without that view, I guarantee you the other one's gonna sell quicker. Number two, Valbridge couldn't or didn't make any contact with our liberal realtors. They just simply took the MLS, took what it sold for, boom, there it goes. They were able to communicate with their KC realtors. Number three, the NAR report I referenced used 10 years worth of sales. Compared to this impact study, guess what they used? 2019 to 2022. COVID years, right? Our housing market, you could sell anything. We got 8 houses still listed, very few to pick from. If you look in their report, this is verified on page 13 with the months of inventory available. Towards the end of 19, we had a roughly 11 to 12 months availability in inventory. Towards the end of 2020, 2021, guess what? We had a month's worth of inventory to pick from. You guys all know it. Buying real estate, flip houses, whatnot, it's hard to come by. There's hardly anything to pick from to buy. People moving in, it's hard to find a house to buy right now. This is very representative of a seller's market and makes this report misleading and with such little inventory to select from. Once a normal market is established, which liberal I would consider 70 to 80 homes, this tower will make it difficult to sell my house. Then Number 6, I've looked at other planning and zoning that other towns have in place. Let's see. This one's from Olathe. In addition, where support structures are located on property zoned for commercial or industrial use that is adjacent to property zoned for residential use, monopoles and towers must be set back from the residential property line a distance equal to the height of the structure measured from the base of the structure to its highest point. Abilene, Kansas. Such structures must be set back from all adjacent property lines and streets a distance equal to, not less than, its height plus 50 feet provided. However, planning zoning administrator may approve a shorter if necessary. You've got Merriam, Kansas. Their purpose, protect residential areas and land uses from potential adverse impacts of towers and antennas, encourage location of towers in non-residential areas, minimize the total number of towers throughout community, strongly encourage the joint use of new and existing tower sites, encourage users of towers and antennas to locate them to the extent possible in areas where the adverse impact is minimal, and then consider the public health and safety of communication tower. Their setbacks, a single family or duplex, 200 feet or 300% height of tower, whichever is greater. Merriam, Kansas, 11,000 in population. Olathe, obviously a little bit larger. Then I got to Dodge City. Dodge City setbacks from all property lines equal to half the tower height for freestanding or guide, or equal to the height of tower for a monopole. Garden City, purpose to minimize the adverse visual effects of towers through careful design and siting standards to avoid potential damage to adjacent properties from tower failure through setback requirements, and to maximize the use of existing and approved towers and buildings to accommodate new wireless telecommunication antennas, to reduce the number of towers needed to serve the community, and to impose such restrictions, terms, time limits, and other appropriate safeguards to protect adjoining property. And their safety should be taken to protect the general public from hazards produced by the tower, such as falling ice, tower failure, etc. And then I got to City of Liberal, 31, Article 20. Radio and television towers shall be permitted in any I-1, I-2, or I-2A or industrial districts, providing the height of said radio or television tower does not conflict with any airport approach or landing zone or with any other ordinance, and said radio or television tower is not closer than 150 feet to any residential distance. I checked with Keith on this. He said should be residential district. So we've got a little blurb in there. We'd like to keep them 150 feet away from a residential district. Which brings me to, we've put up a couple of new towers. They're not even in an industrial zone. We're not even following our own code. So I know there's some residents that would have loved to have had a right to petition, just like I've got. They didn't get it. It was commercial, it was not industrial. I also think we're creating an unfair advantage. I took a couple more pictures out south of town. You got two towers, United Wireless has one, and American Tower. Oh my gosh, look at that, there's no houses. There's not a house around. You've almost penalized those two for following our code to go put it in industrial. I'm sure if they could have found a commercial spot, no qualms about it, they would have loved to have been 100,000 feet closer to town. So I think we need to look at some of our zoning, maybe look at that before we get into building new towers, and see what some of our code we need to update. So I've read through some of the FCC and the state sections that we've been talking about as far as getting lawsuits and whatnot. I read through, and from what I could tell was cities were taking 2 to 3 years to approve a small cell tower, much like that first picture I showed you. They were taking years to get these things approved. They were charging cities crazy, or companies crazy amount of money to put them up. These 5G waves are a lot tighter, smaller, so they got to have them in tighter, closer proximity of each tower. So in a big city, New York, Chicago, they got to put them everywhere. This FCC 18133, the sections 253 and 332, they were brought up concerning those small cell tower and not the big 150-foot macro towers, what they mentioned in there. I was going to read some. This was released September 27th of 18. We thus clarify the particular standard that governs the fees and charges that violate sections 253, 332 when it comes to the small wireless facilities are at issue in this decision. A small wireless facility is mounted on structures 50 feet or less in height, mounted on structures no more than 10% taller than another adjacent structure, do not extend existing structures on which they are located to height of more than 50 feet. We're talking about a macro tower, not a small cell tower. This here was a blurb. While the existing wireless infrastructure in the U.S. was erected primarily using macro cells with relatively large antennas and towers, wireless networks increasingly have required the deployment of small cell systems to support increased usage and capacity. So there's options. You can combine these things to make them work, communicate within themselves, to communicate. And this is a part where I think AT&T has not provided they've provided half of it. It says, construing such language under section 253, some courts have held that a denial of a wireless siting application will prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provision of a personal wireless service under section 332 only if the provider can establish that it has a significant gap in service coverage. They've got it. They've shown that spot where Marvin's going to be building, that's the gap. And a lack of feasible alternative locations for siting facilities. I think they've come to you guys, well, this is your first one. They presented one other one. We have not seen any alternative locations for a siting facility. The First, Fourth, Seventh Circuits have imposed a heavy burden of proof on applicants to establish a lack of alternative feasible sites, requiring them to show not just that this application has been rejected, but that further reasonable efforts to find another solution are so likely to be fruitless that it is a waste of time to even try. This is right out of the FCC decision. I've mentioned, you look at this map, that little black dot's where they're proposing it. Country Club, 63 acres. I can't imagine you can't find a spot to take a pin and go find a spot that this thing would fit. It's 70 by 70. We've mentioned before, there's a guy that's reached out. He was willing to take it. But had some other things that brought up. The appraisal, yes, our county appraiser does not go out and drive around to look at properties and what they look like. They're going to take solid numbers from that area, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and guess what? When that thing starts to decline, those values will start to come down. We have less tax base. This is not taking the load off the entire city. I think you can tell from that red and orange map, we're covering a small section there in the northwest corner. And out of the 14, 15 towers that we do have in town, guess what? We didn't issue one special use permit to get them up. Not one. They were all able to find a spot, fit their coverage, and make it work. Thank you for your time. This is the city of Liberal, not the city of AT&T, not the city of the LCC. So I appreciate your time and your consideration of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
My name's Tony Reinhardt, live at 1821 North Calhoun. You can tell from that address, I live 2 houses south of there. I don't have a problem with this tower, mostly because it represents progress for our city. You know, that's quite a speech. I mean, this guy is not only a banker, he evidently is some engineer of telecommunications and a lawyer. I know Brad does not want this tower. I'm gonna stare at this tower every day of my life, out my back patio. It's progress. I don't like looking at the water tower either. Of course, you guys would have known all this, and I do appreciate the 2 commissioners that took the time to even respond to my email. I guess the rest of you guys maybe live in this dead zone where you don't have email. You know, there's been, as a contractor for years in this town, I've seen so many stumbling blocks put in the way of progress for our community. I just don't want this to be another one. I mean, you definitely have some exposure here. I mean, what if, and this has been mentioned several times, what if someone has a 911 call that can't get through? Well, we've been dancing around with this thing for 4 years. What if that happened within that 4-year window? I mean, everyone knows we need more communication. I just think this is such a no-brainer. Anywhere you put it, a couple people are gonna be upset about it. And to address the whole property values thing, I told you where I live. We paid $30,000 over appraised value for our house. Guess what? They all did. Everyone that lives up around that golf course paid more than appraised value.
I didn't.
I'd like to see the documentation. I haven't known anyone that didn't. So, I just think you guys know what the right thing to do is, and not be swayed by a couple of people being upset. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
My name's Rick Madden. I live at 1509 Fairview. I was here to ask questions at last meeting about some issues. I still want to address one. It's not really address it, but I'd like for you to read or look it up on your phone or your website, World Health Organization, about radio frequencies, okay, being close to houses. I know it's not supposed to have an effect on your vote, whatever, but it is an interesting read. The second thing I'm really curious about, I'm getting so tired of hearing, I gotta call 911, I can't call them. Well, how many vendors, cell phone vendors do we have in Liberal? Are we gonna give every one of them the same priority that we give AT&T? Are we gonna let Verizon put a tower right next to them? And United Wireless, one right next to them, because they need that for their wireless? Or are we just playing one-sided? Okay? That's my big concern, is how you're playing the game. How many towers are gonna go up in that area
for everybody to have equal rights for the cell phone companies. And that's my big concern right there. There's two of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brett Jones. I live at 425 Fairway Drive. I'm on the south side of the golf course. I think this thing just really boils down to compromise. We need more service in Liberal. We have country clubs offering a spot that will negatively affect the least number of people. Mr. Carr's whole deal is not in my backyard. Well, this thing's in my backyard too. It isn't as close, but it's also on my golf course. I'm willing to compromise let's find a spot where we can build infrastructure to help build Liberal and not fall on our face by not approving something like this. We need to benefit, and we need to just offer a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Not everybody paid more. I was the first house around that golf course. I've lived there since 1960. And so the golf course has been there 100 years. I walked on that golf course with my dad when he played golf. My concerns is when the oil fields moved out of here, they were thought about making that all a residential area, just closing the golf course. Fortunately, that did not happen. But I'm also very concerned that if AT&T tears their tower down, it will be like the wind towers that we see abandoned in the wheat fields, and also the oil things that we see abandoned in the wheat fields. They cap them, they take them off to the ground sometimes. Sometimes the tanks stay there for another 40 years. And they never take the concrete out because they simply can't take that much concrete out. And so to tell you that they can restore it to its original use is just bogus. It cannot be done, and they will not do it. The other thing I'm concerned about is they always build gravel roads like they did to the water tower so that they can get into their property closer. God forbid that they would have to walk from the alley to their property. But nevertheless, they have provided some extra spaces in case they want to expand south of there. And it may be progress, but they'll eventually go wireless, just like most of the others have. There are proper places on the golf course that it could be placed, like where the tennis courts were, and it wouldn't bother very many people there. But why does it have to go there? They looked at an alternate spot and were turned down over on Western by the churches. So there are places that they can find coverage if they look for it. Because there's a lot of farm ground out there. because somebody might like the payment to mess up their property for a small fee. And that's really what a lot of this is about. Because they do pay a fee for having a tower there for certain property. And I'm also concerned about if I put it behind your house or your house, any house here, and I had to look at it every time I entertained people in my living room during the day or even in the evening if I have my curtains open, because oftentimes I can look out on the golf course and I don't have any reason to have my curtains pulled. So I have to look at the water tower, and so do my guests. And I don't think any of you, if I put it behind the mayor's house, I don't think he'd like it very well. And I wouldn't like it behind mine. I will see it occasionally because I have to look north when I go out to the alley or to the golf course. But I don't think that it's like sitting in your living room or in your bedroom and looking out at the water tower, or having your kids count the little places on the water tower, or shaded light at night blinking at you because you didn't sleep well. Nevertheless, I think there are alternative places that could be put that would be a lot more acceptable and usable for new additions that are going to go into the city. Thank you very much. And I'm Joanne Sharp, and I live at 1771 North Calhoun.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp.
I'm Catherine Romine, and I live at 1861 North Calhoun. I was at both of the planning and zoning meetings, and the first one, they tabled it so that this man for AT&T could look for alternate places. He didn't look for any other places. There were several people there telling him that showing him different places that were available where they could put it that wasn't zoned or was zoned for a commercial property. They didn't even consider it because they're stuck on this one property. All of these people from the country club are wanting it because they're getting money for it. We're not getting any money for having to sit there and look at it, but they're gonna get money for 30 years, I think, income for the country club. And I think that's the biggest reason that they don't want to look for another place. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just because the staff was mentioned, I want to just for some clarifications. The staff makes recommendations to you and the other boards based on what the city code says, what the statute says, and what the city attorney advises. So, based on the information that was on hand at the time, as we went through this process, that's why the recommendations are what they were. There was a problem. We did retain a local title company to conduct a certified search. I believe on the first mailing, there were 3 that we identified that did not receive the letter because they get their mail at a P.O. box, not at their residence. That was rectified. We were then informed that 6 others, I believe it's 6, did not get the letter, so we sent them a certified letter to ensure that they were notified, and we moved this hearing to this date so that everyone within that area had the opportunity to speak to you. So the decision is yours and yours alone. I just want to let my staff know I appreciate their work, and I think they did it with the utmost integrity and thoroughness that they could have.
And I'd like to add on that point too, the statute doesn't require all this extra legwork that they did to try to notify everybody. The city relied upon an independent third party to get the list of addresses to us, I mean, the city, so they could send out the proper notice for the Planning and Zoning Commission board meeting. And the statute specifically says when notice is sent out that way, it's presumed that it's delivered to them, and then that would start that time period that they could submit a protest petition. It was decided just to try to work with people as best as possible to go ahead and include all those protest petitions within your packet. That way you guys knew that there were people that were protesting it as well. While I have the floor, I know I've sent to all of you 2 different statutes. One's a federal law and one's a Kansas law, specifically 66-2019 and subparagraph F, which deals with what you guys are tasked with when you consider these types of rezone ordinance applications and items that you're not supposed to consider, and denying passing an ordinance of this type. Specifically on there, and I know I hit on this last time, I just want to hit on it again, is based upon other property locations. And I know everybody wants to go back to a couple of years ago when it was pretty much denied for that reason. And I think that was why it was sent back and ultimately it wasn't pursued. AT&T could have easily, I think, started some kind of initiation against the city to enforce the granting of that. They chose not to for whatever reason, and I don't know if they will or won't in the future, depending upon what you guys decide tonight. But by statute, that's not a basis that you guys can actually deny it. At least it's not gonna stand up in court if that was the reason for it. So I think we hit that before, you know, everybody understands we need this, but nobody wants it in this location. That was the issue before with the church property and with this one today. But by the letter of the law, that's not something that you all should consider in your determination, or shouldn't be the basis for denying it if you do deny it. So just wanted to reiterate that again and not.
There's 2 definitions I'd like determined. One would be from Keith, the 150 feet from residential distance or district. Do you have a definition yet?
So I am working on correcting errors in the zone. I do, it says 150 feet from any residential distance. The only rule Magic made was probably be district. When you start out with the BIS, you're gonna, it's probably a.
And if you went district, what does that include?
That would.
Property line?
include the property line.
Okay. For Lynn, I saw that statute. That statute is for governmental authorities on public lands. Public lands, from what I was understanding, may be the lands owned by whatever entity they're dealing with for that statute. It doesn't necessarily address privately owned or even redistricted like here where it's an R3.
I'd say it applies to land, when it says that, it's referring to within the city limits itself. So even though it's not owned by the city, obviously, but because it's land that's within the city limits of local, it applies to the city commission.
Okay.
In granting or denying the request.
And nowhere did I find that a special use permit was addressed in that statute. The limitation or increase of that authority from the city. It didn't limit us and it didn't increase it for a special use. So it doesn't force us to approve one, and then nowhere does it tell it that we can't. So the reason I'm saying that is a residential zone, let's say I had a large enough yard, and I made a contract with AT&T, what you're saying this statute tells us is the city can't tell me no.
I'm not saying that. No, that's not at all I'm saying. I mean,
Okay.
You're taking it way to the nth degree there. If you put it in if somebody contracts with AT&T in your backyard, I can't see AT&T even going that route because they know that's not gonna get approved. And a court's not going to overrule a city commission's, probably because the zoning commission to start with, I'd assume would deny. I don't want to speak for them. I assume y'all would deny it as well. Just because of the fact that it's right in the middle of all those different residences, and it's, I can't see a court ever saying that that would be an error, but I'm just telling you what the statute specifically says with location.
Okay.
And how, in my opinion, that does apply to this location, and that's not going to be, I'm not saying you guys can't use it as a reason to deny this, I'm just saying that if it goes through the process statutorily, it's not a valid reason by the letter of the law. And Keith, on the issue he brought up, I was kind of curious, when this went in front of the planning and zoning committee beforehand, was it represented to AT&T that it was 150 feet from the residential structure?
I don't know that we actually discussed it.
Okay, but it currently reads the way you just stated, correct? 150 feet from a residential distance.
I'll also add that I've got a permit that would put me 135 foot from the tower. I got an emission plan, it's been permitted, ready to go, so I will have a slot that would be 150.
Yeah, I don't think that would supersede this legally.
Which one got permitted first?
Well, it's, if we're going by residential distance, there's no residential structure within a 150-foot distance. And if that's, like Keith said, I don't have any reason to disagree, it says distance, I would say that's from the residential property itself, not what you may make it be in the next 6 months or month or even year. It would be how it sits right now.
Well, a distance wouldn't mean structure to me either, though. If I wanted to interpret it, district or distance would be the same point to me.
How has the city historically handled structure or from property line?
Yeah,
Well,
that's-
that actually was bringing up a question that you'd brought up earlier, and I was gonna ask Keith, because I haven't been on the commission for 21 years consecutively, but off and on, and I've never had a tower for special use brought to me, but I was looking at all these properties that you brought us pictures of, and I am pretty certain that every one of them are commercial property. But then my question is, Brad brought up industrial property. Are towers allowed on a commercial property as well as industrial property, or no?
Currently, the way I read the zoning, there is not a use I can find that allows a tower in a commercial district. I was re-examining that and trying to rework some of that, and it's not even listed under the special uses in the commercial under our current code.
And then if you go back through all these, every one of these are a commercial property though, right?
Yeah,
I
there's
know there
a
was a
few that are
church, but the church
industrial,
was
but
actually a Schlumberger building.
the
and
one at
it's a commercial.
15th and Western is commercial, the one behind the mall is commercial.
Yeah. So just referring to that though, is this body or body before us is not doing any, if we didn't, we're not doing anything that we hadn't done, before, because we didn't do it before. We've never, this body, as far as I know, has never, approved a special use for a tower, so it's not where you're saying if we didn't do it, we've done it before, because we haven't.
And as we organize our ordinances, it sounds like every commercial district also should have had a special use
Yeah.
permit for these towers.
Yeah.
But those are issues we're fixing going later.
All those towers were permitted and approved by the city, and that AT&T didn't do unilaterally. The city disregarded how close the houses were at that time.
Incorrectly at that time.
But regardless, that's a history, and that's a city, that's what you bring to the table here, with all due respect. And that's what is gonna matter in the litigation setting.
He's accurate.
I know.
Okay.
Matters that they're in a commercial zone, you mean? Because that would be the other argument is that they were all allowed to be permitted in a commercial zone.
Right.
Not a residential zone.
Historically, they've been allowed there, not now.
So that would be the other argument.
Okay.
Hey Keith, real quick, specifically what section article is the 150 setback?
It's in the additional heights and uses,
Okay, thanks.
which I believe is 20. And it's number 11 under, I don't know what section of that.
It got you pretty close.
Anybody else like to speak? I'm Lee O'Reilly. I live at 230 Lilac. That's on the north side of the country club, on the south side of Lilac. I am a member of the country club. I've lived there since 1994, and we bought the property at that point in time, again, regardless of the water tower. It seems like there's a couple of issues here that we probably all agree upon. One of them is AT&T seems to want the tower and seems to say that that's the spot for it. That's the one they've looked at, that's the one they are working with, and that's the one they want, not another one. I just heard the city attorney say you cannot deny it because of another alternative location. The other issue seems to be the desire of some people not to have it in their backyard, not to have it as a distraction. I will say that probably everybody but Joanne Sharp that lives around the country club bought their house after the water tower was there. We did. I can't think of anyone else that probably didn't. So we bought it with that obstruction. Didn't bother us. Brad Carr bought it, didn't bother him. I realize the tower is in his immediate backyard. It's not in my immediate backyard, but I am 480 yards from it in Golf Talk, as some of my other neighbors are. I will see it from my backyard, but really, I do not think it'll be that offensive. I don't think it'll bother future buyers. They're going to buy that property because of the property itself, the value of the house, or the value of being around the country club, which we did. And I really don't think the tower is going to be a consequence to them. I'm not concerned with the safety issues. We had a lot of wind a couple of days ago. I don't think the tower was coming down. I don't think it will come down. I don't think the ice will be an issue. So I don't really think there's a lot of safety issues. I think we should, as people have said, try to have progress in the town, try to have additional coverage in that area, and I would like to see you approve it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you for your input. I know we all appreciate it. I know we've all gotten phone calls and emails from people who aren't here tonight, and we appreciate those as well. So, discussion.
I'd just like to see, show of hands in the audience, who's for and against? Okay. I'm not sure how far we want to discuss. Like everyone has said, I am more than willing for that tower to get put in Liberal. We definitely need it for the community. I know once 3G networks started going down and everyone was being moved to the 4G networks, that's when you saw your internet start slowing down. And I truly believe this tower is gonna take a base load off of that so that each individual tower can cover the rest. That being said, like everyone was talking as well, the cooperation between the community, the neighborhoods, and the country club, I would be more than willing to say we would accept somewhere else that just doesn't have, well, I would accept somewhere else that isn't as close to the people. There's 63 acres. Another issue I've had with some of the people I've talked to is when you say, it's not in my backyard, but I'll look at it, and I said, well, why don't we move it toward your backyard? And their answer is, well, that wouldn't bother me, but it'll be in play. And so there's always an excuse to why the tower cannot be somewhere else, and that concerns me and somewhat bothers me. I think if we can put this anywhere else within that country club that is not next to somebody's fence line, or at least in this point, literally to their fence line, because it seems like we need to clear up that ordinance a little. And at that point, we are breaking our own ordinance approving this section. So the option I guess we have is we give it back to the zoning committee with this new information while we organize that, or we deny it, approve it as is, or we just ask them to put it somewhere else. Or finally, I mean, if we say no, we may just go to court on it and see what the state or federal judge, whoever is in charge of it at that point, to go forward. So.
Okay, thanks, Jose.
Well, I absolutely think that we need a tower, and I'd love for it to be on the country club property. And I won't make any of my decisions based on my disbelief that anybody knows how the tower is going to fall. My common sense tells me that it could be wrong, but I have the right to it. That when they give me information that says it could fall at 40-mile-an-hour winds with 3/4 inch of ice, it tells me that it's absolutely possible, and that it's supposed to collapse within itself, and supposed to is not good enough for me. I do care, and it doesn't matter whether it's Brad or any other citizen of this community. If I feel like there's any chance that we put children in danger with a decision that maybe wasn't considered, it's probably a bad deal, but that can't be part of my decision. Part of my decision can't be that I feel like there's a better location on the property that could be used. But I do feel like what can be used for my decision is the fact that this commissioner has never made a decision based on the 150 foot, even though that might have been broken by some other, not by any commission, just by permitted, maybe improperly. With this given information, that decision hadn't been made with the information, and once you have the information, I don't know how you make a decision based against that information that you have. It's different if you unwillingly made a decision not knowing the information, but now that you know the information and it's what you've put in place to be followed in this community, then I agree with Jose that we got to go back and make sure we have everything wrote right, but we can't make a decision based against the rule that we've set, knowing what that rule is now.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, to start off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I wish all of our commission meetings were this full. It really excites me to have everybody in the room. I'd like to thank everybody that has reached out to me, whether it's a phone call, email. I will like to state from the very beginning of my campaign, I have promoted economic growth. That's something I stand by. I worked for AT&T for numerous years, very into advancing. However, the safety of children will always be my first priority. Being a mother, that's something I'm very strong about, and I agree with Ron. That doesn't mean that I'm not basing it, like you said, I'm not basing it because of an alternative location. It's for the safety of families. but I am for working with AT&T on finding an alternative solution. Just because we're not agreeing on this location does not mean that we don't want to work with AT&T. That's something I want to stress about. But we would like to have future conversations and just find a location that works well and does not put any families in danger. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Janelle. You're up. Well, I've listened to a lot of discussion about safety and I just can't see that, as many of these towers as there are across the country, and there must literally be tens of thousands of these, that they would still be being put up if they were a safety hazard. I just don't think that's a valid reason to say no. This is something that we need in order for good cell coverage in the city, and I understand, that it's gonna be an eyesore for some, but there are plenty of things in this town that could be considered problems. The water tower being one, we get north winds, we get Supreme Feeders smell, we get east wind, we get National Beef smell. None of those are pleasant, but we still live here. So I just think that the good this tower will provide the community outweighs the bad. And I just would that's my thought on this, and that's where I'm at.
Okay.
No, Chris?
I bet all these people complain that, that they always compare it to the water tower. Like the guy said, only one person's lived there since that water tower's probably been put up or bought their property before the water tower was even there. So you buy your property with the water tower there, it's completely different than buying a piece of property than something being installed left by it. So I get where they're coming from. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I will make the motion, since it's on the agenda in this form, that we adopt ordinance number 4585. Allowing a special use permit west 1,980 feet of northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of section 29, township 34 south, range 33 west of the 6th PM in Liberal, Seward County, Kansas. I don't think we need to wait for 25
Yeah, we should set up some kind of guideline for motions to die.
I'm gonna take it by the sounds of the second on this. Somebody have an alternative motion?
I'll make a motion that we deny the special use permit. And Lynn, will you need a reason for that?
How?
Yeah, I think they're entitled by.
And my reason is because it's against our building codes, and we've never, in the history that I can see, it's been, there's no proof that we've permitted a special use permit to put up a tower. So it's not within our rules.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? So all those in favor? I'm in opposition to that, so. All right, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for participating, and thanks for your input. So at this point, Lynn, what do we do? Do we start this process all over, or is it just it?
It's done. It's done until AT&T goes through the process to try to get a tower put in for our code or in another manner.
And then at that point, it'll go back to the zoning committee with their new proposal.
If they have to get a rezone, correct.
Okay.
And I guess I will clarify that on the special use, it said the 150 foot. My interpretation is 150 foot from the property, not necessarily just because it's a special use. Because I guess if they did it somewhere on the property that wasn't 150 foot from residential, it would still require a special use permit, right? So I wanted to clarify my wording was because of the break, the rule
150
of the
foot.
150 foot.
Okay. You can just add that under comments after. All right.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Item number 8, resolution number 2388, residential demolition of 640 South New York.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight we come before you to see about demolition of 640 South New York. This property's been vacant for 23 years without utilities. And the city's mowed this property for the last 5 years. And we've sent out certified letter, and we sent it out on August 30th, and we got it back on the September 23rd. So there's been no response on it, and foundation is bricks and cinder blocks, which is all corroded, and it's just been getting worse and worse over the years. And on the north side of the house, it has a bunch of trees growing up through the foundation, and it's just a terrible eyesore, and there's nesting cats and stuff that we've had complaints about, and several other things. And we've sent out 3 bids, and we went with the lowest bid of $6,000. That's for the dirt work, tree removal, and that leveling of the house. And on approval, if you approve it tonight, we'll send out another certified letter, and we'll post this on the house itself and the house that it's supposed to go. We'll put it, and we'll wait 15 days. According to city code, we need to wait 15 days. But we'll go ahead and wait that extra week, because this took 23 days, so I'm assuming we'd get back the certified letter, unreturnable, or return to sender. So that's what we're asking tonight, if you'd allow us to demo this house.
Question I have, does that include filling in whatever crawl space and?
All the dirt work and tree removal, level on the ground, whatever needs to be.
Well, I drove by and looked at it, and while I buy distressed properties, I don't believe I touch that one.
I can't remember anybody actually living in that house, and I grew up in that neighborhood 40-some years ago, so. I make a motion we approve resolution 2388 for the residential demolition of 640 South New York, and approve the demolition being done by T&B Towing for an amount of $6,000.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Item number 9, neighborhood revitalization plan. Eli.
Good evening, I'm Eli Swati with the Seward County Development Corporation. I don't know that I have the authority to do this, but if you need 5 seconds to stretch while I begin my comments, you can go ahead and stand up. I wanted to talk to you tonight about our neighborhood revitalization plan. This was put into place in 2014. It is a development tool used for property and commercial improvements as a means of kind of easing that burden of cost constructions on those developers, whether that is residential or commercial. We have a fairly aggressive example of a neighborhood revitalization plan when you compare it to other communities. What this provides in new construction is a 95% rebate for 10 years on those incremental property tax increases on the new property tax. And if it's an addition to the property, as long as it meets certain thresholds of 10% or 20%, depending on whether it's residential or commercial, those can be a 95% rebate up to 5 years. This particular plan is supposed to be reviewed every 3 years. To my knowledge, I don't know if we've been keeping up to date with that or not, at least not in the 3 years that I've been in economic development. So what I wanted to do tonight at least was to begin discussions about the potential for expanding the particular map we have for our neighborhood revitalization. If you look at the plan that was in your packet, It includes the current map and how that is lined out in the city. Similar communities across Kansas and western Kansas in particular have gone to different models to either be community-wide, city-wide that is, or in some instances even county-wide. What that does is it opens up opportunities to eliminate issues of, well, I can get a rebate if I improve property on this side of the street, but not on the other side of the street. And for example, our current map goes right down Kansas Avenue. So if you bought a building in downtown Liberal on the east side of Kansas Avenue and put in renovations and remodel, you would qualify for this particular program. If you bought buildings on the west side, you would not. Similar to Second Street, if you bought on the second side of Second Street, or south side, you could qualify. The north side, you could not. It is a valuable tool. I have been contacted by a number of commercial property owners who happen to be outside of the current map, and I think they are interested in expanding, but as you know, current costs of construction are significantly higher than they were. While this is not a huge economic boon for that construction cost, it does provide at least some incentive for them to get some of that property tax rebate over those next years and kind of balance out a little bit of that cost. Are there questions about our current plan?
So this would be not necessarily for infrastructure construction, but for construction of the actual home or building itself, correct?
Correct. Any sort of residential improvement, if you provide an addition on your home that increases the value greater than 10%, then that would qualify for this. If it's the same on the commercial one, if it increases at a certain threshold, then it qualifies. It doesn't have to be any sort of infrastructure. Are probably not going to increase that evaluation enough. It needs to be significant additions. For properties such as 640 South New York, it would be a great example of where you come into a level property, the property taxes are probably zeroed out. If you build a house on that, now the appraisal is significantly higher, and you can capture 95% of that then over the next 10 years.
And so every lot that sits within this can be developed that way, and they could apply to this?
I've ever worked in, there've been countywide NRPs, but each city has to adopt their own, and then the county has to adopt one as well. So if we adopt it and no one else does, the only abatement comes from the city portion. That makes sense.
Okay.
And then I believe, I have to look again, but I think it's 5 years for residential, 10 years for commercial, for the abatement, or did I misread that?
If it's 10 years for new construction, 5 years for additions or remodels. And then you have to have at least a 10% increase on a residential property valuation and at least a 20% increase on a commercial.
So that's determined by the county appraiser?
Correct.
You know, I can't see why we wouldn't want to consider something like this, you know, community-wide. If we're looking for a way to do it, that's for sure.
Just be another tool.
Yeah.
It helps us move the needle, which is, that's kind of the business we're in right now, is trying to move the needle.
What you're gonna do away with the property tax basically is just the gain over where you're at. So if you have a $100,000 house, you build an addition on it, it's worth $150 after the addition. You're not paying, you're getting 90. It would never be out $1 on this. All we're doing is postponing any valuation gain that we would get.
And they would be rebated, right? You do actually have to pay on that, and then they give it back to you.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
And then this is the only one I've ever seen where there's a full abatement for the full period. The other cities, it's kind of graduated. It's 100% for 2 years, and then it goes down to zero as it works its way down. So that's another point of discussion. We'll have to, like the mayor said, we lose nothing by covering the entire city. This is money we didn't have anyway.
That's right.
So.
These businesses and these residents want to come in and make improvements.
It's similar in ways to the RHID as far as you getting your money back or whatever, I guess, but we've had participation by all the taxing entities in it. He said, but most of them have participated.
Well, if conversations led to wanting to go countywide, then we would have to have extended conversations with those other entities. Other countywide examples include agriculture in the language, and there's no agricultural mention because this one is just the City of Liberal side.
Okay, so I assume we start working on something that would update that, since it's 8 years old now, so, and come back to the commission at a later date for. Thank you.
Eli, real quick on this plan, is there a termination date of the plan that was adopted back in 14 or not?
It says specifically, should have highlighted this ahead of time. There's no sunsetting of it.
That's fine, I didn't. So while we're debating this issue and trying to tune it up or change it however we want or tweak it, this is still in place, so anybody who's in that up in your packet, they can still apply for this program as set out within these. Is that right? Chris is thinking about it correctly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, the program period just says the NRP with tax rebate incentive program shall be evaluated 3 years from the effective date of blank 2014, following the adoption of the appropriate and local agreements, unless terminated sooner by state or local action or extended by the parties to the interlocal agreement.
And there's an interlocal agreement right now, is there?
It is just the City of Liberals.
I don't have any other questions.
All
Sorry
right,
for the
okay,
interruption.
thank you, Eli.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I do have to step away because I have to go to the trick or treat event.
Okay. Okay, item number 10, city staff.
I got two quick things.
Okay.
So the last commission meeting, I told you about the Yellow Park, the rehab was gonna be done. We opened it the next night. Place was crowded with people. Nobody even knew it was open. So if you get a chance to go by there on a nice evening, there'll be 50 people out there using both courts. And the other thing, I wish I had an update on Second Street, but I got nothing. There's nobody working.
Yeah, with that one, we've kind of just accepted that they're gonna come in the last week of their
I
contract.
don't know. I wish somebody knew.
Yeah.
Item number 11, city manager report.
All right, I am very close to completing the second ARPA list. So look for a work session sometime between, I mean, we may even do it November 8th if we have time before the next meeting. But sometime in the next week or so, I'm gonna reach out to you for dates and times. It's gonna be a little more involved because we have some significant infrastructure projects that really need to get done, which means we're gonna have to move some stuff around that we had previously evaluated. We started this week, we went through the items of the 1 cent sales tax and started looking at projects. So Chris and Steve and I and Brad are gonna sit down and kind of compare. A lot of it's based on what the folks on the Future gave us. In the city that weren't included in that because it was 2 or 3 years ago. So we're going to put together a project list and give you guys probably 3 options, and then how we're going to fund those 3 options. So look for that hopefully in November. Steve's also working on a Citizens Academy, something they do in Derby and KCK. It'll be like a 6-week program where we get 20 or 30 citizens sign up, and we teach them about city operations. They talk to you. We take them to the PD. We take them to around the other city facilities and kind of give people an inside look at how the city operates. So after a whole lot of back and forth, and there's never, obviously, there's never a good time to do this, so we've picked November 17th at the Girl Scout building for the town hall. We tried the 3rd, we tried the 10th. 10th is planning and zoning, and we didn't know how tonight was gonna turn out, so we didn't wanna schedule it then. So, is it 6:30? And then the last thing I have to update is the search committee for the police chief is gonna meet for the first time on Thursday. From the staff, it's myself, the HR director, former Liberal PD lieutenant, and a former LAPD detective. So he's going to provide great insight. And then from the community, we have 2 men and 2 women who have volunteered to help. And because we don't want there's also some sensitive information, so everybody on that search committee is going to sign an NDA that it's not going to be discussed until the search is complete. But I'll continue to update you as we go through. The big topic we have to kind of determine is if we're going to retain a nationwide search firm. I got 2 bids. One was $25,000, one was $27,000. And you know, that's pretty substantial. So Bruce started looking for contingency agents, is that what it's called, today, who are much more cost effective, and we only have to pay the full amount if we pick one of their folks, but it could also help guide us through the process. So I'm not shortchanging it, I'm not diminishing it. It's just $25,000 or $27,000 is a lot of money. So we're gonna kind of take a good strong look at that before I bring it to you and ask you to legitimately spend that much money to do that. But that is it, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
I got one addition. Tomorrow night, 5:30, legislative dinner here at this building.
Okay. All right. Okay, item number 12, items from commissioners.
I guess I want to thank everybody that showed up tonight, the ones that are still here and the ones that left. It's important that we hear from the public, because that's the only way we can make decisions, and especially when they become difficult and complicated and several factors involved, and which factors, and then, of course, legal makes it more complicated when he tells you what factors you can consider and which ones you can't. But that's why we have him here, and it's important that we have that, and we appreciate him. I appreciate the rest of the commission for being here and having to go through. I'm not really certain. I'm certain at some time in those off and on times in the last 21 years, I've kind of felt like I was sitting in that same seat, having to make a tough decision, but they don't get much harder. So,
Good enough.
yeah. But anyway, I appreciate the public for showing up and letting us know how they feel, so we know, because you're who we represent, and that's how we should base our decisions on what we feel like the majority of our population wants. So.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
Well, basically ditto. The only thing I would like to add to that was when we were at the League of Municipalities meeting, we had an assistant city manager was hosting one of those meetings, and they told us how important it is to have a plan for the community. And that's partially what this town hall will help us do, where we can try and leave out some of this emotion. And everybody there that was an elected official basically looked at him like he was growing a third head, because that is correct. We should be focusing on the economics of the city, on the what is best to grow it, and how we can move forward. And quite frankly, our city staff don't really get to focus on the emotions. They're not going to be elected. They're not going, they do serve the community, but their job is to make sure the city is running how we set it in our bylaws, in our ordinances, in everything that's done there. That being said, like Ron said, the commissioners even there basically said the community is who elects us, the community is who we listen to, and quite frankly, that is the direction we're gonna go, and that makes our city manager's job and the entire staff's job much more difficult, but that's why we hired them. So that's how we're gonna continue to do things. We're gonna be focusing on continuing to update ordinances. As you can see from today, we had quite a few issues that were discovered that have been done in the past for many, many years. That's part of that project as we move forward and update a lot of what's going on in the city. That's all I have to say. Thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to all the staff for everything you do. That's all I got.
I'd just like to, like I said, thank everybody for coming out here. I always feel that being a commissioner, we're supposed to be the voice of the community, and I feel like we're supposed to be part of the people that do the safety of the community too, so, and I think we did that tonight.
Okay. Also, thank you, everybody. Just want to let the commission know that even though I didn't vote the same way the rest of you did, I will support the decision that was made by the commission, so I don't have any sour grapes about it at all. I do think that we definitely need to address any codes that are involved in this so that we don't have this kind of a situation come up in the future. 'Cause I mean, it's, you know, I mean, I've spent a lot of time going. It should be a cut and dried decision. It should be something that's easily arrived at. So I intend to push for that, and I know Keith wants to too, that we need to get this, we need to get our code square so that it's much easier to deal with. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I appreciate all the input that we've gotten on both sides. And with that, item number 13, vouchers.
I'll make a motion that we approve the vouchers in the amount of $2,246,909.14.
Second. Oh,
You beat you. All right, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Okay, thank you very much.